Hello everyone, welcome to Wednesday Night Browns Insider. I am Dan Labbe and joined by Mary Kay Cabot and Tom Reed. We're going to talk all things Cleveland Browns for the next half hour or so here on cleveland.com. If you are watching the show, jump in the comments below, sign into your account, ask any questions you have, leave any comments you have, and we'll try and work them in throughout the show tonight. Of course, the Browns are heading to Tennessee coming off of the bye. They are 1-2, trying to get back to 500. And let's go ahead and bring in Mary Kay and Tom. How are you guys? How was your bye?
Good.
It was great. Nice to get away for a little bit.
A couple days off, and now the grind starts. You got 13 games coming up for this team, 13 weeks in a row, and it starts in Tennessee. And look, their next 5 guys are very winnable football games. Tennessee is a very winnable football game. We've seen this before with the Browns, though. Can they take advantage of this game in particular on Sunday, Mary Kay?
Only 13 games left. You so sure about that now, Dan?
Uh-oh.
If things go the way they probably should go over these next 5 weeks, these Cleveland Browns should be in the playoff hunt by the time the first half of the season is over.
With Josh Gordon coming back.
With Josh Gordon coming back. So, I mean, when you look at this, they are a combined 4-16. The Titans are playing horribly, although Jake Locker is supposed to be back for this game. Not that that's going to be any necessarily great shakes, but, you know, they've lost 3 straight. They were just blown out by the Colts. So, you know what? When you look at these next 5 games, this is the sweet spot in the schedule. They've got 1 Super Bowl winning quarterback in the bunch in Ben Roethlisberger, and it's an opportunity to win a bunch of games. They can win all 5. Of course, they can't play on the road. That's a little bit of a problem. But I think this team can. I think this team can win some games.
Tom, Tennessee, I mean, is this the start of the turnaround, I guess, in the Mike Pettin era? Those first 3 games, it's almost a miracle they're 1-2, I think a lot of people thought. Although, based on what we saw, maybe it's a little disappointing.
Well, I think this is one of those games, if you're going to get back, if you're going to become a respectable franchise, you have to beat the teams you're supposed to beat. And this is a classic example of that type of game. I mean, you could not draw up a better road game scenario. Coming off a bye week, the other team's quarterback's coming off a wrist injury. I mean, this is a game they have to win. And because I think, I'll take just a little bit, I agree with a lot of what Mary Kay says about this 5-game stretch. They could win 4 games, 3 or 4. I'm not quite as optimistic as she is, but I do share her optimism. But if they lose this game, and then have Ben Roethlisberger coming to town with a 17-1 record, you're all of a sudden turning it around and saying you're facing the prospects of being 1-4. And here we go talking about draft but I think they should go in and win the game in Tennessee.
Yeah, you mentioned if they lose this game, you're right back to more of the same. Like you said, you're talking draft in week 5. You got Pittsburgh coming to town. It's a slippery slope if they lose this game. You hate to say a game in Tennessee is a must-win in week 4, but it kind of is.
I think it's fair. I do. If your intent is to get to like 5-3 or so at the break, and you have Josh Gordon a couple weeks away from coming back, you have to win this game.
Mary Kay, let's talk about the Titans a little bit. And Tom and I were talking before we went on. You mentioned there's not really anything the Titans do well. And I was watching them a little bit. They kind of remind me of some Browns teams that we've seen in the past. With Jake Locker coming back, what can the Titans do? What kind of problems can the Titans cause the Browns? Or is this a situation where the Browns should be able to dictate things?
You know what? I think the Browns should be able to dictate things. I think this is a game where the run defense should look a lot better. I think they should be able to get to the quarterback. I think they should be able to continue to force some turnovers. I don't think there's anything that really jumps out or stands out about them that they're doing very well right now. The thing to remember, however, is that they beat the Chiefs. They beat the Chiefs in the first week, and we just saw the Chiefs knock off the Patriots. So they had to be doing something right. Now, Jake Locker played very well in that game. Of course, he had a 111 rating in that game. Then he came back the next couple of weeks, and he had like a 66 against the Cowboys, I believe, and then he had a 40 rating against the Bengals. That's the game in which he injured his wrist. But I think this is a game where all of a sudden, Joe Hayden is going to look like the cornerback that everyone expects him to be. You know, Justin Gilbert might be able to build a little bit of confidence. I think that this is a game that defense and all those numbers that we've seen, 31st ranked defense, 29th against the run, and all those horrible numbers, they're all going to start to look a little bit better in this game.
Tom, they beat Kansas City, like you said. That's not the Kansas City, though, we've seen the last couple of weeks, especially Monday night. They're a very different football team. The other thing about the Titans is, over the last few weeks, they haven't really scored much. They haven't scored much early in football games, and the Browns, on the other hand, have been very good scoring early in football games. So there's a good chance we're going to get a feel for this game pretty quickly in that first half.
I believe they're the only team in the NFL that doesn't have a point in the first quarter this year, which is strange. And it's part of the reason why they are, A, playing from behind so much, and B, haven't run the ball a lot. And I think they do have some decent running backs, but they're behind in games so constantly. It's one of those things that I think you're kind of forced to abandon the run in some ways. So they're obviously, their thought is quicker starts. And I'm sure they're looking at the Browns thinking the same thing. The Browns are looking at them like, man, here's a winnable team. This is a winnable game for us. We can't beat a team that's only won 3 road games in 3 years. Who are we going to beat? So their confidence is going to be high.
You know what? I mean, it is to a certain degree, but they're coming off of a 41-17 absolute blowout loss to the Colts. So I think there is a little bit of a difference. I think any team that would be looking at the Cleveland Browns right now would have to be pretty scared to look at them and say, you know what, this isn't the 1-2 that it might look like. They can just as easily be 3-0. So I don't think the Titans are thinking, oh, hey, you know, this is going to be a walk in the cake, as Butch Davis used to say.
No, I don't think that, but I do think that, you know, after playing, 3 playoff teams in their first 4 games, the Browns represent a chance to get back into the mix as a chance to kind of get their season going again. And they're, much like the Browns, if they're sitting at 1-4 at the end of this game, they're talking about the draft. They're, you know, what's going to happen with their future. So this is a huge game for them as well. And again, I'm sure they feel it's a winnable game for them.
And let's be honest, you know, the Browns are still kind of in prove-it mode. Yes, they've looked better in those first 3 games, but they've lost 2 of them, and they probably, realistically, should be 3-0. I mean, they had that big comeback against Pittsburgh. They should have been able to finish that game and win. Of course, they beat New Orleans, and they should have beaten Baltimore. So the Browns are still sort of in prove-it mode as well.
Well, they are, and what they have to do a few things better, and they have to continue to do some things well that they have been doing. One of the things that they must continue to do, not turn the ball over. They are the only team in the NFL that does not have a giveaway this season. They're plus, I think, 3 or 4 in the turnover differential. So they've got to keep taking it away and not giving it away. That's what they're doing very, very well. Brian Hoyer, 156 passes without an interception. So they have to keep that alive. Brian Hoyer has to keep playing well. They have to keep running the ball well. Those are all things that are going well. Defensively, obviously, the pass defense hasn't been good, the run defense hasn't been good, and the special teams have been horrible. So those are the 2 things that need to get better, and the offense needs to continue to play well.
Let's get to some news out of Berea. Ben Tate, back at practice. Is he going to play this week, Tom?
Sounds like it. I think today he was limited, but I think that the thought is each day he'll get better as long as there's no setback. I would forecast that he will play.
And he will start. He'll get his starting role back, Mary Kay, is that correct?
Yes, I think he will get his starting role back. And everyone talks about Ben Tate as, hey, you know what? He's got the experience. He's got pass protection. He can catch the ball out of the backfield. He does so many things well. He was off to a great start. 6.6 yards per carry, ripped off that long run in Pittsburgh, where it's difficult to get that kind of chunk yardage against a defense. So I think you'll see him back in there. I think they're excited to get him back in there on 3rd down for the reasons we just talked about. And you know what? I do think, however, that means somebody's going to lose, obviously, a few reps. And who is it going to be? I think you'd have to go with Terrence West.
Really? Terrence West instead of Isaiah Crowell?
You know what? Just based on some of the things that we've seen lately, with his ability to just not dance around at all and just one cut and go, and he averaged 5 yards per carry in the last game, whereas Terrence averaged, I think, 3 yards a carry. So, that's just my guess that Isaiah would probably get the reps.
And it was the Crow out there, Tom, trying to run that clock out against Baltimore. He didn't do it, but he was out there.
Yeah, I would agree with Mary Kay. I think that you might see Crowell get some more carries, and I think he's deserved that. Again, now the issue now becomes with Ben Tate coming back, he's still not going to be getting the carries that Ben Tate is, and that's where you get into the flow where I think Mary Kay was talking to Ben Tate the other day. He doesn't think you can really go with a 3-back. It works better with 2 backs, and I tend to agree unless there's an injury or guy has to come out for an extended stretch. I think I think you will see more of Crowell.
And when you look at the situation, if Ben is not ready for full-time duty yet, and again, he's playing with a brace on that right knee, and as a running back, that can be hard, although he reminded us yesterday that Adrian Peterson had a 200-yard game with a brace on the knee. So if he needs to have that on there to have the confidence in the knee, so be it. But if he needs to be eased into the lineup, you can always use him on 3rd down, and then you could use the Crow on 1st and 2nd down, or maybe even a combination of the other 2 guys.
All right, now, Ben Tate aside, this team has been relatively healthy this season, which is sort of rare for a Browns team. Usually there's some sort of major injury in training camp or early in the season, but this team has been fairly healthy so far this season. So I was trying to decide. Obviously, Tate, they were able to replace his production pretty easily, but who's the one guy, if he got hurt, this team just wouldn't be able to function or just really have trouble replacing him?
Well, I mean, I think right now you'd have to say Brian Hoyer, because you just don't know if johnny-manziel is ready to go in there and get the job done. Although, I suppose that they would find a way to game plan around him and give him enough to do that he does well to put him in a position to succeed. But I think you'd have to say Brian Hoyer right now, because he is elevating the play of so many guys around him. I mean, who expected this offense to be overachieving and playing as well as it is? Gary Barnidge. I mean, you're hearing names, Andrew Hawkins is looking like a Pro Bowl player. Miles Austin is playing well. So I think all of those guys are doing well because of what Brian is bringing to the table. He's the guy.
Tom, who in your mind? Is it Hoyer? Do you have somebody else that you think this team would really struggle to replace if they got hurt?
Well, given the fact how much struggles the defense has had, there's nobody on that side of the ball. Yeah. Obviously Carlos Dansby's played pretty well. Gibson's been okay, but you have to come back to the quarterback. And we've seen in the last 2 years as this team has slowly built its talent base, even though it's not really showing in wins and losses, that when they get competent quarterback play, they're not bad. They're not a bad team, and we've seen that in the first 3 weeks.
Yeah, I'm with you guys. I think, again, there's a lot of questions about Johnny-Manziel. Nobody knows if he can do the job, and if you can keep continuity at that position, it just makes everything so much easier. And Brian Hoyer is finally giving you that. Another thing I want to talk about before we get into doing some true and false and fill in the blanks, Gil Brandt did this kind of redraft, and I've got it right here, and he's got the Browns still trading out, by the way, and not picking Sammy Watkins at number 4. A lot of talk about Justin Gilbert and how he's been a disappointment for this team, and he thinks that the Browns, had they had it to do over again, or if they could go back in time, he thinks at number 8 they would go with Teddy Bridgewater over Justin Gilbert. I wonder what you guys think of that.
Well, you know what? I don't envision that as something that the Browns would have done. As I was, doing all my draft coverage and digging around, I came to the conclusion that there were some people in the organization that really loved Teddy Bridgewater and others that weren't as excited about Teddy Bridgewater. There was not a consensus necessarily on him, and also Teddy came out right after the draft and said, I didn't want to play in Cleveland. So you really don't want to have a quarterback here that doesn't want to be here. Now, part of that might be because his agent had represented Peyton Hillis, had a bad experience here. Kennard McGuire did with Peyton Hillis, and I'm sure he was concerned about the environment and the stability and those kinds of things. So I'm not feeling that. I'm not necessarily going to say that a year or 2 from now or 3 years from now, they'll be overly thrilled that they picked Justin Gilbert. The jury is completely still out on that.
Tom, what do you think? If they had it to do over again, would they have taken Bridgewater? And also, do you think the old regime would have taken Bridgewater? Was he a guy that the old regime liked?
I don't know.
They spent all that money on that
since they liked Manziel too, didn't you?
No.
No, you don't think so?
No. They liked Teddy Bridgewater.
I don't know. I think that the Bridgewater, we'll see. Yeah. These are easy things to speculate. I think you give Gilbert time. He's going to have to, obviously he's not played well early on. Cornerbacks, we keep hearing, sometimes take time. And, we'll see where they are at the end of the season.
And look, I mean, it's really way too early to kind of speculate on that stuff. It's been 4 weeks. The Browns have played 3 weeks. I mean, you look at his number one, he's got the Texans passing on Jadeveon Clowney and taking Blake Bortles. Well, Clowney's hurt right now. If he comes back and becomes the guy the Texans believe he could be, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Well, you know what? This would be interesting to do, maybe at the end of a season. I mean, if you're going to try to look at a Teddy Bridgewater or a Blake Bortles, you would want to see a little bit of a body of work before you decide that he should have been the, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
I think that we'll have a better idea, once these guys start 10 or 11 games. Even Justin Gilbert. I mean, he's being put into a situation where he's playing press man coverage. He's out on an island when he's out there. It's a difficult job, and he's going to be tested early and often. And look, Buster Skrine, there were plenty of times in Buster Skrine's career where he gave up big plays and people wanted to run him out of town. Now, I think Buster Skrine, for the most part, has really come on strong. In fact, in the first 3 games, he has played better than the other 2 guys.
Yeah.
So, you know what? Justin Gilbert needs a little bit of time. It'll take at least 3 years to say yay or nay on him as the number 8 pick.
And Mary Kay, you've made the point a number of times as well. What was it, 11 games for Joe Hayden into his rookie season that he finally started? The quarterback position is a difficult position to learn. I mean, I've heard people say it's the second most difficult position to learn after quarterback.
Absolutely. I mean, your mistakes are completely magnified. You cannot make a mistake without it becoming a headline, basically. So that's the situation that he's in right now, and I agree. It's probably number 2 in terms of, behind the quarterback in terms of, being able to be thrown right in there and trying to excel.
All right, let's do some fill in the blanks. I know you guys have been doing these with Chris Fedor the last few weeks, so let's keep it going. Let's start with the division, kind of what we've seen, 3 weeks in for the Browns, 4 weeks in for some other teams. Kind of on paper now, based on everything we've seen, the Browns are the blank best team in the AFC North.
You know what? That's a tough one. It's still early on. Again, they've only played 3 games, and some of the other teams have played 4. I'm going to say right now 3rd.
Okay. Tom?
I'll rain on the parade and say 4th, but I would have easily agreed with her and say 3rd, but I'll just stick with 4th right now. They've got to beat Pittsburgh. I think Pittsburgh is the 3rd best team in the division. They've got to find a way to start beating these teams, and until that, I'm not gonna give them that.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think in 2 weeks, if we're talking about a win over Pittsburgh, you change that around a little bit. Blank is the biggest reason the Browns can't stop the run.
You know what? I think some of their defenders are struggling right now in the new system. I'm going to put it right now on all of the guys trying to learn to work together in the new defense, and they're not there yet. So I'm going to say inexperience in the new system.
Tom?
Yeah, I'll just say gap integrity and guys trying to do too much. I think in trying to take the pulse of the locker room yesterday about that, and just guys just not doing their jobs, trying to do too much, and a lot of times you have guys not staying in the gaps. But I do agree with Mary Kay, and they're just learning a new system, a different scheme. Sometimes it's the personnel packages they have on the field. We know that Pettin likes to play smaller groups where he can. Now, that wasn't the case against Baltimore, because Baltimore ran a lot of double tight ends and more of a power look, but I'll stick with the gap integrity and guys just doing their job.
What about the defensive tackle position? They seem to not be getting the production we thought they would get out of that position, and I think that's big in that run defense.
Yeah, without question. But again, in some of these games, they haven't had all those guys in the field at the same time because they're running in these different personnel groupings. But yeah, I mean, this is, and I've been one of them people that have touted that line as being the strong point of the defense, and I think it has been the last 2 years, but not to this point.
Well, when you look at some of the analytics, like on ProFootballFocus.com, if you look at the rankings, they're just not good right now for some of those guys. Ataba Rubin is number 70 out of 72. Cool. He's way down in the rankings. Phil Taylor is also way down there. I believe he's 50 out of 52. So there's a lot of guys that are not grading out well right now. I asked Anthony Weaver, the defensive line coach, about that, and he basically said numbers are deceiving, you can't go by those kind of things, and you don't know who's exactly supposed to be doing what at certain times. But they do need those guys to step up. Again, I don't necessarily think it's a talent issue as much as I do it's let's figure out where we're supposed to be and when we're supposed to be there.
Okay, next one. This is going to require a little bit of math. So
Oh,
I
no.
apologize in advance for this. The Browns are 1-2. They have 5 games until they go to Cincinnati. Their record when they go to Cincinnati will be blank.
You know what? Let's see. I'm going to say, let's say 5-3.
Okay.
Even though I have,
So you're
even
going
though I have
4-1.
said that there is a chance they could win the 5 games, because I like to make bold statements.
She's backing off a little bit. She was going with the 5-0.
Well, it can. They
Yeah,
can
yes,
go
yeah,
5-0.
yeah.
They
I'll-
can.
Yeah,
But will they?
I'll say 4-4.
4-4.
I'll say 4-4, but they have a very good chance of being 5-3. But I'll be the negative guy here and say 4-4.
I'm not going to make a prediction, but I think they should be 5-3 when they
Yeah,
go
I
there.
think
There should be an expectation. Fans
Yeah,
should be willing
absolutely,
to expect
absolutely.
them to be 5-3 when they go to Cincinnati, and that could be a really fun Thursday night game.
It could be, but then when you look at that second half of the season, and we are allowed to look ahead, by the way. They can't, but we can. When you look at that second half of the season, it gets really tough. You've got the 2 Cincinnati games. You've got the Baltimore game. You've got Atlanta. So it gets very, very tough. So even if they are 5-3, you have to be careful that it's not fool's gold, because the second half of the season, although they will have Josh Gordon back, is going to be very tough.
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now. Like you mentioned, they've got the Texans at Atlanta, at Buffalo. Then they have the Colts, the Bengals, at Carolina, and at Baltimore to finish the season. So that is an absolute grind after this easy portion of the schedule. Okay, back to the running backs. The Browns' best running back is blank.
All right, I think it's Ben Tate. I mean, I still think it's Ben Tate because, again, I didn't see anything in the preseason or the first half of the first game that said he wasn't the best back. Those other 2 guys have done a nice job. I like Crowell's potential, and, Terrence has flashed as well, but I think Ben Tate is the most complete back.
Okay.
I would agree with that. It's Ben Tate right now. It's Ben Tate, and you can even hear Wilbert Montgomery talk about him like that. You hear Brian Hoyer talk about him like that. You know what? He's shown that he is ready to take over a team and carry the load. Now, of course, he's got to stay healthy. Let's see how that knee holds up. But if he can get back and get in there, I think he's the best back.
And he's got to hold on to the football. That's big, too. He's had some fumble issues throughout his career. I'm going on strictly potential here because, look, Ben Tate has the resume. Isaiah Crowell does not. But when you see him run the football, if at some point in his career he can show the ability to carry the load, I think he's got the chance to be the better back. Right now, though, I'm with you guys. It is Ben Tate. Down the road, maybe a little different. All right, real quickly before we go, I wanted to do a little true and false as well. And we're going to go to the quarterback position, barring injury. So if Brian Hoyer is healthy, johnny-manziel will not start a game this season. Is that true or false?
That's true. I mean, if Brian is healthy and playing well, I don't think you upset that apple cart.
I think it's true as well.
All right. Andrew Hawkins, Pro Bowler.
I'm going to say no, just because I don't know that the team's going to get the recognition and be on TV enough for him to get out there. There's a lot of really great receivers in the AFC.
Yeah, I would also say false. And so many times in the NFL, and Mary Kay knows this, you really have to have 1 or 2 really great seasons before you get that recognition, especially when you play on a team that has struggled as much as the Browns.
And it'll be interesting to see how teams kind of adjust now that they've seen 3 games of this, Andrew Hawkins being the number 1 guy. How do teams adjust to defending him and him being that number 1 guy? Plus, Josh Gordon's coming back over those last 6 games. That's going to take some touches away from Hawkins.
Yeah, the other thing, when we were talking to Brian Hoyer today, he said as you get deeper and deeper into the season, you can start to really get some film on guys. So now that it works conversely, teams are getting film on some of the Browns again too. So again, how will they defend an Andrew Hawkins? And how will they start to break down Brian Hoyer? Now teams are going to see a little bit more of him on film. Now they've got 6 games to watch. Even coming into the season, there wasn't that much film on him. You're going to start to get the Ray Hortons and these guys that are going to try to find the weaknesses. So far, it hasn't happened. Nobody's been able to really find his weaknesses. It'll be interesting to see if that holds up.
Okay, Justin Gilbert. Let's go back to Justin Gilbert. And I don't know, that this says much about him with the secondary the way it is, but true or false, by season's end, we'll be saying Justin Gilbert is the second best corner on this team.
True or false on that?
True or false? Even if it's by default.
Yeah. I think you will. I think you will. It'll be tough. I mean, again, Buster right now has probably been their best cornerback to this point. Maybe I should say they better hope so.
Yes, they better hope so. But I don't know. I don't know if he's going to be able to catch up to Buster at this point. Buster has some good years under his belt, and he's playing well.
Yes,
he's
he
coming off a really good season in which he was, I believe, 4th in the league with about 21 passes broken up. And Justin Gilbert, at the rate he's going right now, is not ready for full-time duty. He's still going to be worked in there, whereas Buster is going to be continue to start on the outside, at least for the time being. So I think it might be hard for him to catch up.
Okay, last one, and I got to ask this one before the stretch of games, because look, if the Browns go to Tennessee and lose, then this is a laughable question. But for now, with a little bit of optimism, let's ask this, looking ahead to the final game, all the way to the final game in Baltimore. We just saw a great game between the Browns and the Ravens. True or false, that game will carry meaning for both teams?
False. I just don't see the Browns, that schedule in the second half is going to be so difficult. A lot of road games, I believe, the road schedule kind of picks up. I say false.
So you're wondering if that's going to have playoff implications for both
Pretty much.
teams?
Both teams will still be alive at the start of that
I'm
game.
going to say true. I'm going to say true.
All right.
Because with Josh Gordon coming back, anything can happen. And I'm still not overly impressed. Now, Cincinnati pulled away last year and did a really nice job. But I think that the Browns I think they've closed the gap in the division.
I'd like to think it will. They've got to. I'm with Tom on the winning the division game thing, though. Like we talked about earlier, they've got to win their division games. Now they have a lot of division games in front of them. They still have the Steelers. They still have the Ravens once. Obviously, the game we were just talking about. They still have the Bengals twice. There's a chance, but again, Browns still kind of in prove-it mode.
I think if they beat the Titans this week, I would not be surprised if they beat the Steelers. I think that's why this game is so important. They were so close the last game, and to be honest with you, with the game against Pittsburgh last year here was kind of an outlier. They've played the Steelers tight the last couple years. I think if they win in Tennessee, they got a really good shot at beating Pittsburgh and Cleveland.
All right, right now, I don't have to hold you to these predictions, but you can change it, obviously. What are your feelings about this game in Tennessee? Do the Browns win easily? Close game? Do they lose? How do you feel about it?
I think the defense is going to show up in this game and make some big plays. I think they're going to sack Jake Locker. I think they're going to strip him. I think they're going to, intercept him. I think they're going to create turnovers, and I think they're going to win this game, and I don't think it's really going to be that difficult.
Tom?
Yeah, I think the Browns something in the range of 27 to 17, something like that. I think their Titans are the worst team in the NFL on third downs offensively, so that kind of plays into what Mary Kay's talking about, getting the defense a little back to where they think they could be. Again, I think they have to win this game. I think they're ready to go down there and win.
And it seems like when teams have been able to pressure Jake Locker, like a lot of young quarterbacks, that's when he has struggled. The Browns, of course, we saw it against Drew Brees. We saw it a little bit against Ben Roethlisberger. This is a team that can bring pressure. This is a team that likes to bring pressure, so that bodes well in this matchup at least. And really, Tennessee, they don't run the ball all that well either. They have Sean Green, but he's not really the Sean Green of old.
Again, I think they've gotten so far behind in some games and again, if you're the Browns, you want to hope that trend continues. You don't want them to get comfortable with a running game, but I just think this is a game. If you're selling yourself on you're an improving team and you're coming to respectability, you have to win this game. You have to go in there and win the game. It's
going to be interesting to see how Ray Horton defends Brian Hoyer and tries to come after Brian and tries to pressure Brian, because they'll try to do the same thing, try to get him off of his mark, try to get him out of his game. Of course, this is a better offensive line, so they should be able to handle it, but that'll be an interesting matchup.
And do you think Jimmy Haslam wants to win in his home state?
Oh, yeah, of course. He's got scoreboards shaped like his home state. Of course he wants to win. So that was your matchup. Ray Horton, what's he going to do against Brian Hoyer? Tom, what are you watching?
You know, I think that one matchup to look for in this game, I guess I want to see Jordan Cameron bounce back. I mean, he's had the week off, and I think he was fairly honest, knowing that he's going to have to battle through injuries. Maybe a Bernard Pollard type of matchup, you know, the safety against him. He needs to kind of elevate his game. He wants to. I'm sure he wants to go out there, maybe have a 4 or 5 catch game, kind of get back to where he was last season.
I did a little research. The Titans quarterbacks have thrown for 879 total yards this season. 317 of those have gone to the tight end, Delaney Walker. So that's the guy to watch. The Browns have struggled a little bit against tight ends. Everybody struggles against Jimmy Graham. But this team has struggled a little bit against tight ends. He's obviously whoever is playing quarterback for that team, he's obviously the safety valve, their most important player. That's the matchup. How would you cover him? I mean, do you put Joe Hayden on him again? Didn't work against Jimmy Graham. Do you put Whitner on him? What would you guys do?
Oh, we've seen we've seen them try different things. At times we've seen Carlos Dansby. I know in the game against Jimmy Graham, he had him early in the game. In fact, on the interception, he was guarding him. I think they like to rotate things a little bit, and sometimes in the middle like that.
It'll be interesting to see. Now, we talked about Barkevious Mingo a lot today. Now, he's dropping more in coverage instead of going forward, which I think is very interesting because, you know, he was drafted as an edge rusher, and now they have him kind of dropping into coverage a little bit more. So, you know, it'll be interesting to see, you know, if they try to do something, you know, with him in that regard on a Walker. But, I mean, Tayshaun Gibson is someone that, you know, I think, you know, can handle an assignment like that. And, boy, he's just been playing lights out, and he's been great, and he's such a ball hawk. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I think he's someone that actually could make a run at the Pro Bowl.
All right. That's going to do it for our Wednesday night edition of Browns Insider. We will all be in lovely Tennessee on Sunday. We'll have a pregame show, halftime show, in-game chat. Tom and Mary Kay will have instant reaction at the buzzer, all kinds of stuff from the locker room after as well. And then I'll talk to Dennis Maniloff immediately after the game on our Browns postgame show. That's all coming up Sunday at cleveland.com/Browns, and we've got coverage throughout the week of this game, preparations for this game, and if you missed any of the show, we'll have the full archive of it up a little later tonight at cleveland.com/Browns. For Tom Reed, Mary Kay Cabot, I'm Dan Labbe. Thanks for watching.